Hi, everyone. I am Crystal McKenna, realtor with Long Realty Partners here in Casa Grande, and I cover Casa Grande and the surrounding areas. And I am so thrilled today to have one of my favorite people here, Karen Jones, who's a mortgage lender with Altitude Home Loans. And I'm going to let her speak a little bit about herself first, and then I have some questions that have been asked over the period of time in this unique market that we're in. And Karen's agreeing to take a moment to help answer some of them today. But for the time being, Karen, can you tell us a little about you?
Sure. I'd be happy to. First of all, thank you very much, Crystal. You are awesome at what you do, and your clients absolutely love you. So I am so honored to be a lending partner and one of your partners there on your team. So I've been in the financial industry, gosh, I'm going to age myself now, for over 40 years. Started at Bank of America, moved over to a company that I was with for about 13 years, and just joined a smaller company called Altitude Home Loans. But yeah, I love doing what I do. I believe in home ownership. I believe in the real estate industry. So I am here to educate, motivate, and inspire folks to take advantage of this market, because really now is the time to buy, because the competition is just not there right now.
No, I agree with you 100%. And I know you and I also don't force anybody to do something that's not a good time for them. But what
That's
people
why
don't
education
really,
is so vitally important.
I agree with you. And I tell people, regardless of the market, people are going to still buy and sell homes because of what their situation is. Either they have to downsize, relocate, whatever it may be, or maybe they just don't want to pay rent anymore. It just depends on their circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always going to be moving parts there's always going to be the market moving, whether or not we like the terms, but there are ways around it. And I agree with you when it comes to this. If the prices or if the interest rates were a lot lower, we would be in a totally different market, and then we would have no inventory. Right now, people need to see that there's an opportunity here, and with the right team partners, they can utilize it and then put themselves in a better financial position later on. Again, this may not be for everybody, but for the individuals that it can work for, it might be an opportunity to take
And that's
advantage.
why exploring the numbers is so vitally important.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of loan officers, I understand, are just order takers, and they just want to get in the loan opportunity and get you into closing. And that's really not the right team that you want to hire. Your team is your real estate agent and your lender. Those are your two main team players. And those two folks that you choose to work with you, they are there to guide you to make really good decisions. And to do that, you need to understand the numbers. If you don't know what the numbers are, how are you going to make a really, really strong decision for you and your financial budget, right?
Exactly. And Google is not always right.
Google
Same
is
thing.
not, I love Google, but Google you're absolutely correct.
I did write down my questions, so I do have them in front of me from
Okay.
the time period that people were asking me. Karen, how is the rising inflation rates affecting mortgage rates right now?
Well, inflation is a devaluation of the U.S. dollar. And inflation is the arch enemy of mortgage interest rates. So the Fed is going to try to decrease inflation. And as they decrease inflation, mortgage interest rates traditionally have improved over the past 50 years. As inflation goes down, so did the mortgage interest rates, and they also improved. So it really all depends upon how the Fed manages that. What caused this? Well, I don't know what caused it, but I do know government spending causes inflation. But back in the Great Recession, the government had to stimulate the economy. So when they stimulate the economy, the reverse happens. They make interest rates even lower. And when they did that, they did something called purchasing mortgage-backed securities. It's basically the bond market. They purchased monies from the bond market. And when they did that, they artificially kept the interest rates lower. And that's how we were able to get down to those 3% 30-year fixed rate mortgages a few years back. Well, when they stopped doing that, that's when interest rates started to creep up. And then when they started selling their mortgage-backed security investments, then that's what caused all of the differences in the markets and the economy as we have right now. So right now, inflation is running rampant, or was running rampant. It's under control a little bit better, but the Fed feels it needs to be further improved upon.
And I noticed some of these questions that people have asked me, you've already answered some of them, such as like, what impact does the Federal Reserve have on home loans and rates? You touched that. And I know in the beginning, you and I also touched base on, is this a good time to buy or should I wait? And again, it really goes back to what your circumstances are. We actually have inventory that's not moving. This could be an excellent opportunity for the buyer to take advantage of. And what are your thoughts, Karen? Because people are saying, oh, interest rates are almost 8%. Yeah, there's inventory.
Yeah, so I've got this cute little Instagram reel that I like to share with you. I am a certified mortgage advisor. I follow MBS Highway. Barry Habib and his team has been analyzing the mortgage industry for the last 30 years so, and they're just incredible at what they do. So I'm going to share my screen real quick just so you can take a look. And let me put the sound on so you can hear it. And let me bring this up.
Should I wait for rates to come down to buy a home?
The short answer is no, you shouldn't. But let me show you mathematically why. You were looking to buy a $500,000 home today, and you said you wanted to put 10% down. So your loan amount would be $450,000, and you'd have $50,000 down payment. I know a 7% rate looks scary, which is the current interest rate that you could get. But let's just pretend that rates do come down over the next year by 1 percentage point. So if you waited, you can get this mortgage at a 6% interest rate. Here's the problem. Homes are expected to appreciate and continue appreciating because there's simply more demand and the very limited supply out there. And the homes in this market that you're looking to buy in are expected to appreciate by a little over 5% over the next 12 months. That means that same $500,000 home will be worth $526,000 next year. And if you wanted to keep the same loan to value or put 10% down, you'd have to borrow more money and have a little bit more of a down payment. So let's look at the results. If you wait for rates to come down by 1 percentage point, you would save $146 a month in repayment. And over the course of 12 months, you'd save about $1,800. But here's the problem. You would miss out on $26,000 in appreciation. And compared to renting right now, where your landlord is getting all that money, you would be paying down your mortgage and amortizing $4,600 or gaining that additionally in equity. So you would lose out on almost $31,000 by waiting for rates to come down just to save $1,800 over that period of time. And remember, when rates do come down, you can always refinance to that lower rate. Let's pretend that costs $5,000. Well, guess what? You would still be to the plus side by about $24,000 by buying today versus waiting.
Should I wait for...
And fortunately, as a member of the MBS Highway, I have access to those tools. So if your buyers ever want to explore it, I can help them discover what their situation is.
I think we're all visual creatures. And I think when we think about it in our heads, it sounds one way, but once you see it on paper or like on a graph, you see it differently. And
wasn't that a cool little reel, though? Wasn't that really cool?
It is. It is a cool little reel. And I think more people should not be afraid to ask for the numbers or ask to explore these options. I think when it comes down to it, they don't have to commit into anything, but they at least can sit down and talk with you just to see what the numbers look like. If it makes sense now, then great. If it doesn't, I know you're still going to give them an action plan. A side note to everybody, Karen Jones is one of my preferred lenders, and anytime we both, again, believe in home ownership. And like I said, when we meet with somebody, if it's a no, we don't tell them that. We say it's not now, it's when, and Karen will sit down and have an action plan. But there is a catch to it. You have to do the action plan. We cannot do it for you. As simple as the action plan, believe it or not, people do struggle taking that first step. But we are your biggest cheerleaders along the way as well.
That is so true. That is so true. I really wish I had the presentation skills of Dan Habib. But so when your clients talk with me, it's going to be a little bit more grounded.
It's all good. I mean, when it comes down to it, people don't need a show to put on. They just want somebody who cares.
Yes,
and
yes.
I think if they take 5 or 10 minutes and talk to you, they're going to realize, okay, you care. You're not a car salesman. we all have duties to our clients, and we really take our duties very seriously when it comes to it.
Right.
I know your time is limited, so I'll ask a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
I know this one I'm going to answer. It says, do you expect home prices to continue to rise? Yes, I do. I'm seeing it in my market. I did see a small dip, but now in the last couple of weeks, I'm seeing it go up. I'm seeing agents showing the value of their homes when it comes to appraisals. Buyers are starting to see some homes pop up, and they're not going to last long, so they're trying to get in there, and they're doing full price offers. It is not like it was a few years ago where people were doing 50K over asking and waiving things. We're not there anymore, but we're still in a traditional seller's market, and I do foresee it going up. And some price points are just going to move faster than others. So I'm going to answer that question, and I'm sure Karen does see other markets within Arizona, and I'm sure you can possibly validate
it's all
that.
around. It's all around. And the buyers that are out there right now are the buyers that are buying for the first time or have been out of the housing industry for a while, and they want to get their foot back into the door because they understand that they're not going to be bidding against those investors, or cash buyers. Most important thing, though, because it is a seller's market and it is a competitive environment, having your loan prepared for success is so vitally important. So that's one piece of the education that I do provide buyers. If you decide to move forward, if these numbers work for you and you can live with these numbers, number one, once your loan closes, you become my client. And when you're my client, then I will continue to watch over those interest rates and what's happening in the markets. I follow the markets each and every day. And I have a saying, you marry the house and you date the interest rate. So when that interest rate starts to drop some, then we're going to explore a rate term refinance. And we're going to always explore numbers first because it might not be the right time for you. So it really is vitally important to understand your numbers, number one. Number two, to have your loan properly prepared. And what I'm talking about is not just pre-approval and not just pre-qualified. I'm talking about credit approval by underwriting because most consumers don't understand that the only person who can approve and deny a loan is the underwriter. Most consumer thinks I get to approve or deny a loan, and that's just not the case. I get to pre-qualify. So we want to make sure that your offer is going to be as strong as possible. So when you are competing against 2 or 3 other first-time home buyers, yours is going to rise to the top of the stack because you're going to be as strong as a cash buyer. So that is a huge difference. Would you agree with that? You're the one negotiating. Do you agree with that, Crystal?
It does make a huge difference because, I mean, there's certain lenders out there that if I work both with buyers and sellers, just to let everybody know. There are times when I'll get a pre-qual and I know that lender just took everything on the phone. And so I do, it's my fiduciary duty to let the sellers know, like, hey, look at this pre-qual. Documents haven't even been collected yet. They haven't even pulled credit yet. Everything's over the phone. That is not the same as me getting something that shows that documents have already been created. A notation from Karen saying fully underwritten, credit approved. That carries a totally different weight when it comes to negotiating with offers, because you could have our offer with Karen Jones but have it proved credit underwritten than an offer where somebody just did a pre-approval and hasn't even been looked at. It does carry a totally different weight when it comes down to it, because then it solidifies the buyer's intentions. And I can say for a fact that Karen plus my preferred lenders I work with, they really educate the buyer of what not to do during a transaction, because
Right.
a lot of times people think, oh, just shuffle the paperwork, we're good to go. Karen really is involved with it. She may have assistants, but they only do the paperwork, but Karen is the point of contact for the transactions. And she's not only educating me on the circumstances, she's educating the buyer as well of what to do to keep that momentum going so that we're at the closing table and signing and getting those keys. And I can validate what Karen says, that once you close a loan with you, you are her client. She is going to continue to stay in contact with you. And if she sees that something might be more beneficial for you, she will reach out. I mean, I've heard people call me like, did you know Karen called me today? I'm like, yeah, that means something changed, and she's letting you know about it. But yeah, when it comes to
I call for happy birthdays too.
Yes. And so I do, and for my peace of mind as a realtor, having somebody that has been underwritten and the underwriter says, yeah, you're good to go, it's a game changer, because when you're looking at homes, and Karen, would you agree, when it comes to buyer's anxiety, and this is not just with first-time home buyers, this is with buyers across the board, the numbers is what
Oh,
gives them
definitely.
anxiety.
So I've had a lot of clients referred to me by various different real estate professionals, and some of them are coming from other lenders, and they were never educated on their numbers, so they had that culture shock when they got their loan estimate, and they're like, "Oh my God, I can't do this." And real estate agents understand buyer's remorse. You understand buyer's remorse, right, Crystal? So whenever I send a client to Crystal, there is no buyer's remorse because I've already gone over all the financials with them. So there's nothing to be remorseful about. They understand what the plan is. They understand where their numbers are at. And then just to take that a step further is that once it could take 2 or 3 weeks for you to find that special home. So your file has been credit approved. You got a strong pre-qualification. And now you're out there in the marketplace, and it could take 2 or 3 weeks before you find that special home. Well, tell you what, with the environment today, interest rates are going to be different 3 weeks from now. And I can't guarantee you that they're going to be lower. They could very well be higher. For example, last March, my clients were at about a 6% interest rate. Today, we're about 7.5% interest rate. So things change. So when you do go to make that offer, again, it's your buying team. A lot of loan officers says, all right, here's your pre-qual. When you get a contract, reach out to me. Well, your lender needs to be a part of your team. So when you are looking at a property and you want to make an offer on a property, then we need to take a look at current interest rates. We have to take a look at what the property taxes are in that property. What are the HOA dues? Have to show you those numbers all over again to make sure you're comfortable with them. And more importantly, that your buyer ready pre-approval is also going to work for you, because we don't want you to go above those numbers and no longer qualify. So it really is a team effort when you buy a house. When interest rates are on the downswing, it's much easier because we don't have to be concerned about things going up higher. But when interest rates are on the upswing, we definitely want to protect each and every home buyer, because this is a huge investment that you're making. Usually it's one of the largest transactions you'll be doing in your lifetime. Mm-hmm. And we want to make sure that you're guided every step of the way and you know what's going on every step of the way, so you feel confident in all of your financial decisions.
Now, I do have a question for you. And mm-hmm. because you cover Arizona, I cover my little bubble. Mm-hmm. I mean, I am licensed in Arizona, everybody, but my expertise is in the Casa Grande area and the surrounding communities. What are you seeing any areas that are more buyer friendly within the seller's market? Because I know you work with a variety of realtor professionals, and so you're seeing a variety of different markets. I still think my market is pretty buyer friendly, but it might be pushing our locals out, but it's bringing a lot of outsiders in.
Well, it all depends upon the purchase price point, really. Mm-hmm. Purchase price points below $300,000, it's a really tight market. It's a really, really tight market. So every market is tight. So they're usually getting 2 or 3 offers on the property. What I have found is the homes that are outdated are the ones that are on the market longer. And thank goodness we do have resolutions to those. We've got what's called a rehab loan, where you can finance the cost of the cosmetic stuff. It's not structural stuff, but cosmetically you can go ahead and get new carpet and new appliances just to kind of bring it up to date a little bit. So we do have some resources to help. And when I work with real estate agents for listings, I teach them about that rehab program so they can market that property as a rehab opportunity. So I think the older homes, the homes that are sitting on the market for a while, usually are not up to date. And because it's costing so much just to get into the home, the home buyers, especially our first-time home buyers, just don't have those additional resources to go ahead and cosmetically fix it up. So those are staying on the sideline. However, I think if I was a first-time home buyer, I would definitely grab those properties, because even if you didn't do the rehab loan, because the rehab loan is a higher cost to it, so we have to weigh the pros and cons. But if you didn't do the rehab loan, you can always, you don't need to have everything now. You can kind of work on it for the next 2 or 3 years and have certain goals for yourself. Or when interest rates do finally improve and your home value does go up higher, then perhaps maybe you can, take out a second mortgage, or you can go ahead and do a cash out refinance to do those home improvements, or you do it yourself and you're able to just do it on your own timeline. I'm probably old school, but that's how I did my first home. So it worked out well for me.
Well, I know when I work with especially first-time home buyers, I tell them you may not get everything on your wish list.
Right.
And this is probably not going to be your forever home either. And I'm sure you agree with me, Karen. There's a difference between compromising versus settling. Settling means you're just picking out the home and you're not happy with it. It doesn't bring good feelings. Compromising means you still feel good about it. You are willing to give up something for a greater feature
Right.
of it, whether it might be your payment or the house features, whatever it may be. And I know Karen's on board with me. We'd rather have you compromise, not settle.
Exactly right. Because once you get your foot into the door with home values increasing, now a 30% increase that we saw a couple of years ago. I mean, I think 2 years in a row, we saw one at 26% increase, another one at 32% increase. That's not normal appreciation for a mortgage for a home. A home is supposed to increase about 2 to 5% every year. On $100,000, that's $2,000 to $5,000 a year, okay? And homes have gone up $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want, you need a place to live and a place to call home. 98% of consumers still feel that owning their own home is their American dream. So we do know that this is an important goal for many, many families. So it doesn't have to be that perfect home. Get your foot into the door, live in the home for 2 to 5 years, let it appreciate in value, and then you can go ahead and resell. You can sell it, or you can rent it out and do it again and start creating your rental portfolio. So there's so many things that you can do once you get your foot into the door. Secret is getting your foot into the door with compromise.
I agree. Now, this one I think we both can answer is how are the current market conditions affecting home appraisals? If the home is priced well, it's going to praise. And again, it all comes back to reasonable expectations. My job as a realtor is to always educate the seller of where their home might be selling at in the given market in the given time. And ultimately, I don't have the final say of how they want to price it. But
Correct.
I do always let people know if you overprice it, we may not get the appraisal that you're hoping to get. And also, if you overprice it, you're missing a whole bunch of buyers out there when it comes to it. You want to price it ideally at market value, because then you're going to attract the people who are going to want to see your home and have the budget for your home when it comes to it. So when it comes to affecting it, if the home's priced right, it's going to appraise just fine, in my opinion. But again,
I would agree because especially for our first-time home buyers, that's an important thing. And when you go out there and purchase a home, your real estate professional, and I know Crystal does this each and every time, is going to do what's called a comparable market analysis, otherwise known as a CMA. And she's going to go ahead and she's going to make sure that the home is valued or is worth what you're making an offer on for. Because if that appraisal does come in lower, then you have a challenge there. You have to go back to the negotiation table and either get the seller to reduce that purchase price point, which, would you agree, Crystal, most of the time happens?
Most of the time it happens, but I also see, depending on the contract, if the buyer is asking for seller concessions or home warranty,
right.
The seller's mind is, well, if I'm losing money, you're going to have to give up something
Right.
too. And
which could kill your transaction if you're needing the actual seller concessions. It can kill your buying strategy. So that's why when we do work with our buyers, and before we show you the numbers so you see what your offer is going to look like, and then we make sure we do our due diligence up front to make sure that home has the opportunity to come in at the appraised value, because unfortunately neither Crystal or I are appraisers. And sometimes appraisers see things differently than us, but we give the listing agents, ideas. We tell them make sure that the appraiser knows about all the home improvements on the property, provide receipts as proof and things of that nature. However, the fact of the matter is that the appraisal is the name of the game. That's going to set the purchase price point, and trying to get one to change is really difficult. Once the appraiser sets their price, it's really difficult. So we want to do our job up front right the first time, so we have no problems down the road. With that being said, I haven't really had problems with my appraisals because the appraisers know that we are in an appreciating market still. It's not like it was in 2008 where home values went down by 50%. And remember, that Great Recession is so much different from what we're facing today. What caused that Great Recession were the poor loans that were provided. The federal government made deregulation and made the access to money so easy that everybody got a loan. And everybody shouldn't get a loan. You need to be able to qualify for a loan. Today's mortgages, you have to qualify. You have to prove on paper that you have enough money to pay for that mortgage.
No, and I agree. I used to have I have a background in social services, and I know when people were coming to get housing assistance, we had to collect documents. We had to show proof that this is the need for it. And people, I know I know at one point in time, money was given out to anybody and everybody, but safety guidelines have been put in place to help trying to protect our economy and protect the housing market. And you also have lenders out there that care. They don't want to just lend money to anybody. Karen's not one of those people. So she's going to do her due diligence and collect the documents and also educate you too, to make sure that we're not just issuing a bad loan. We're issuing something that's going to be doable for you.
Well, there's a lot of checks and balances in the lending industry. So because, it does affect so many levels. It affects investors. It affects Wall Street. It affects, so many different levels it affects. So, our real estate industry really is one of the main factors that carries our economy. So we have to keep it vibrant and healthy. And we do that by providing mortgages that are real. And we provide that by getting folks who qualify into homes. And then it's going to help that family grow their wealth as well, because you can grow wealth with real estate.
Now, this next question, we kind of touched on it. This is, what strategies can we use to make our offer stand out? And earlier, Karen did talk about getting your file underwritten, getting it approved by the underwriter. I think that is one of the best strategies right there. And wouldn't you say that's free? It doesn't, it costs you time, but...
Well, not all loan officers offer this, and not all lenders will allow their loan officers to offer this, because in reality, it costs the company between $1,000 to $2,000 per file to get it credit underwritten. And that's why, because we have to pay, the processors, the underwriters, the assistants, they're all spending time on the file, and time is money. And then they have to access different programs to run different reports, and every different program and report that is ran costs money. Like, for example, credit reports. The consumer doesn't pay for that up front, but the loan officer does if they don't close a loan for that client. So there are fees just about every time you run anything on a program. There are fees in our industry. So there are fees associated with it. So not all loan officers offer it, and that's why the pre-qualification and pre-approval is such a big part of the picture. Pre-qualification is where someone just does an interview and doesn't really take a look at any of their documentation, or they look at their documentation but don't do any verification with third-party verification sources. Pre-approval is when they take a full application, go over all the declaration questions, and they run the file through what's called desktop underwriting. It's using intelligent software to ensure that all of the attributes of that file, the credit report of that file, the intelligent software will say, yes, we give it a pass or we give it a refer. There's no approve or deny at that point in time. It's either a pass or a refer. You know, the processing team and the underwriting team, they do all the verifications of employment, verifications of deposit. They verify with Social Security. They run the file through Madden. They run the file through IRS checks. They go through caviars. I mean, there's so many different reports that they go through to ensure that that borrower is really a true borrower. For example, did you know, Crystal, that in 2017 tax liens and judgments were no longer reported to the credit report?
No, I did not know.
Yep. So that's a true case. And if you go back to articles back in that time frame, you'll see all these articles saying, oh, you know, 60% of consumers will have their credit score boosted up because tax liens and judgments are being removed from them. But my follow-up question, if someone had a tax lien on their property for $30,000 that they owe the IRS, do you think they're going to be able to close on a loan and not pay that tax lien? So that's just one of the benefits of going through credit approval. Underwriters are responsible to verify that there's no judgments. A judgment is when someone sues you and you lost in court and your paycheck could be garnished or something of that nature. Sometimes your paycheck is not garnished. The judgment is just sitting there. And then IRS tax liens, the underwriter is responsible for that as well. And did you know that there's only a certain amount of fees that a borrower is allowed to pay in order to get what's called a qualified mortgage? So and that's really pertinent in today's environment. If the fees are too high for that buyer, we can't do the loan because it won't pass qualified mortgage. And that's why when your team understands that, I'll go to Crystal and I'll say, all right, Crystal, we can go ahead and do a loan for her, but this particular client needs a seller to pay for at least $2,500 of their closing costs in order to pass Mavent. So that's why the communication between the loan officer and the real estate professional is so vitally important. If your agent doesn't know that and they write a contract without seller credit, that loan file is going to fail the pricing and won't be a qualified mortgage. And lenders just don't do loans without it being a qualified mortgage. The federal government has put such major restrictions on lenders, we won't do it. And that's when you have to go to private lending. And private lending is going to be a whole lot more expensive than our world of a qualified mortgage. So there's all those little things that consumers just don't really understand.
Well, I just learned a whole bunch right there just listening to you talk as well. I know we keep mentioning first-time home buyers. Are there any programs right now that are available to them in this market for somebody who's just like, maybe they're tired of renting or maybe they want to move out of mom and dad's
Oh, yeah.
housing? And first-time home buyers are not necessarily the millennials. It can be of any age. And I think
millennials did surpass the baby boomers, so they are really out there. They're starting families, and they're in the age group between the late 20s to early 40s. So they are definitely in that market to buy a home. So, and they are really out there quite a bit. But to answer your question, you don't have to be a first-time home buyer to participate in the various programs. Now, the programs that were available years ago when the interest rates were down about 3% or so, those really are not very much available anymore. If they are, they're highly expensive. When I educate a consumer on their home buying opportunities, I always educate them with using down payment assistance and without using down payment assistance. If they have the cash available to purchase a home, whether it be a gift from a family member, whether it be a loan from their own 401k that they're investing in themselves, or if it's a withdrawal from their 401k plan, or if it's just savings that they've gathered, I'll ask those questions to find out what they have access to. And then once I understand what they have access to, then we explore their different avenues. Now, there are 100% programs available, which right now I think are battling the down payment assistance programs that have forgiveness to them. These down payment assistance programs that offer 100% financing allow you to finance your down payment. And so those are priced much better. Those are much more accessible. where the other ones come and go based upon what's happening with the bond market and pricing.
Is that why at one point in time some of those programs were kind of put on the back burner or kind of removed as some choices?
Right.
It wasn't just, it didn't seem feasible for the consumer. And
yeah, because all those programs are all based upon what's happening in the bond market. So if the bond market is too high, you only can charge a certain amount of interest rate as well. Otherwise, you're considered a high cost loan, which again is going to take that consumer out of the qualified mortgage bucket, which lenders can't really participate with. So that's why when interest rates get hunky-dory, we don't get pricing options for those. Today, our Home Plus program had some pricing options, but the interest rates are about a point to point and a half higher than what it would be if you used your own funds. So there really is a huge difference between the two.
And it has always been slightly higher to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
It's always been higher.
So it's nothing new. You're paying for that extra assistance.
Right. So I always explain to people, you've been around long enough to know there's nothing free in life. So you don't have the cash to do it. So these down payment assistance programs are going to help you with the cash, but you're going to pay for it in the form of higher upfront fees and a higher interest rate.
Now, I'm not too familiar with this, but are adjustable rate mortgages a good idea in this current market?
All the ones I priced out weren't very good for a 300,000 or 500,000 and below. It might make sense for a larger jumbo type of loan, because jumbo loans are just a whole different animal. But for our like 500,000 and below buyer, the rates don't make, they really are not that much better. And you have to qualify at the higher rate. So qualifying for them is much more difficult.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do get asked this question, especially buyers that are trying to shop around. Do traditional lenders, not new build lenders, but traditional lenders, do they offer incentives?
Well, and that's the funny thing of it is that when someone buys from a builder and they're offering incentives,
mm-hmm.
the builder gets to set the purchase price in that home, and whatever the purchase price is basically what the appraisal is going to come in for. Mm-hmm. So what they're doing is that they're just increasing or changing that purchase price of the home to offer the benefits, and they do that long before the consumer ever walks through the door. We right now a mortgage banker, which is what our company is, we are priced so lean, there is no room to provide incentives. We don't have the building to sell to you. We just have the loan to provide to you. So if you're able to get into a home with a new build and they're offering incentives, one of the things I would, if you've already been pre-approved by another lender or credit approved by a lender, then I would have your agent try to negotiate with that builder to use the outside lender while providing the incentives. And sometimes the builders will do that. Other times they won't. They'll force you to go to their lender. And my feeling is I want what's best for the consumer. If I could match it, I would reduce my commission, which I've done before, mm-hmm. but I can't match what the builders are doing. Some of their incentives are just incredible. But remember, it's priced into the loan long before you ever even walk through the door.
No, thank you for answering that, because I know I do get asked that question. A lot
mm-hmm.
of times we're shopping around, they're like, well, can so-and-so do this? It's like, well, we got to have a conversation and check with them. But like you said, a lot of times, well, like we even talked earlier with down payment assistance, nothing's free.
Right.
You want to look at the finer details when you get your loan estimate to see what is it really costing you to get that smaller percentage. Sometimes it might be worth it. Sometimes it may not, but it doesn't always hurt to ask, like Karen says, I use my own lender and get the incentives? My experience as of right now, most of the time they say no.
Right. And I think because there's too many buyers out there interested mm-hmm. in their homes, there's no reason for them to do that. But you never know. Always ask. Mm-hmm. One thing I've learned early in life, you always ask, because all they can say is no. If they say yes, fantastic. And just remember, you're not going to see it on the loan estimate because it's priced into the builder's side of the equation.
Okay.
So you're never going to see it on the loan estimate. You're going to see it on the builder's cost of the home. And so when they do their base price at the very beginning, because they know what's going on, they follow the same reports that I follow. So they know what's trending in the market. They just price that all into the price of the home. And that's why for every phase, there's different prices for the homes. Do you ever see a phase going down in value?
So we all learn something every day.
Yeah. So yeah, it's priced into the house, the builder's
Okay.
side of the equation.
Now my next question is, is it better to look below my budget to account for the rising rates? You already know my opinion on this, Karen. I'll let you say yours.
Well, I can talk about how I do my job. I really can't talk about what other loan officers are doing. But as I do my job, I always overcompensate for taxes and insurance and HOA dues. So when the price, and I always, go a little bit below their debt to income ratio to give us a little wiggle room. If that makes sense. And then that's why, as I alluded to earlier, it's totally so important to go ahead and if you've got a home that you have an interest in and it's been 3 weeks down the road, have your loan officer take a look at what current pricing is. They'll look up what the property taxes are. Insurance, they still have to estimate on, but they'll know what the property taxes are and they'll know what the HOA dues are. So they can make sure that number one, you still qualify, and number two, the numbers still meet your goals. Because if the interest rate goes up higher and it's within your buying range, but the interest rate goes higher, you might not be comfortable with that payment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important for you to explore your numbers because what I can qualify you for and what you feel comfortable in paying could be two different numbers.
And that is one of my favorite things about working with you. I always tell people when it comes to talking with you, I always tell them, find out what you can maximally qualify for because it's always nice to know what your max amount is.
Mm-hmm.
But then I always tell them, look at your budget. Look to see what you feel comfortable paying each month because there's things you're not accounting for when you're looking at things. And there might be things that they still want to compensate for and still enjoy in life. And you need to know your numbers when it comes down to it. If you have no
Right.
idea what your budget is, Karen and myself can't help you.
Right.
We need to know what you feel comfortable paying. And I've had Karen many times reach out to me saying, Crystal, they want their payment to be $1,700. This is what their purchase price is looking. What does it look like? And there's been times I'm like, depending on the market, it's like, yeah, we're good to go. Or it's like, it cash only deals. And then we have to go back and talk to the person
Right.
and educate them back on the market. And so I always recommend to people, and I'm going to be honest with everybody. My husband handles the budget when it comes to things. And so a lot of times I always have to go to him, but we still need to know what our numbers are. You still need to know what you're paying out, what you feel comfortable with. And if you're a person who's never had those responsibilities and you're used to having Starbucks every day, and then all of a sudden your mortgage payment is $2,200, you might have to make some shifts and make some changes in your life to accommodate it. And you're going to have to weigh what's important to you. Is it having your own home, building your own equity and your own roots in the area, or do you like winging it and just having your Starbucks every day or your coffee
Oh, no,
every
I
day?
totally get it. So I just had a client, a couple of weeks ago where she came to me and she wanted to buy a house and she's into a rental payment of $975 a month right now, which in her particular area was like, wow, way low. I mean, 50% lower. So she wanted to buy a home and the purchase price point in the house that she was living in was about $400,000. So I told her, and she goes, well, I'm thinking of buying the house that we're living in. And I says, well, great, let me show what the numbers look like. And the numbers were like $3,000 versus her $985 of what she's used to paying for. Well, do you think she had, shock? She was shocked, right? So it took us about 2 or 3 different conversations to finally get her to figure out, all right, $950, she realizes that's not the proper budget for her. And what does she want to spend each and every month on a mortgage? That's the most important number that I needed to understand. So once she got me that number, then I was able to do a reverse math problem to figure out, okay, she wants to spend no more than $2,200 a month on a mortgage payment. Now is reverse engineer that math problem to figure out what her buying power was at that dollar amount. And that was very useful. So those are, it might be a couple of phone calls, a couple of conversations. You might not get all your answers in one setting because you might need to do a little bit more discovery and do a little bit more research on your end so you can really calculate. Because again, I might be able to qualify you for, which I could qualify her for that $450,000 home, but she did not feel comfortable with the budget. And we definitely want to do what's right by our clients by getting them in a payment that's good for their budget. With that being said, you have to understand a $1,200 payment is not going to get you a whole lot. So you have to be able to take a little bit of risk on your side to push your monthly payment higher. And some things that you can do is on my website, you can go to a tax savings calculator. Perhaps you can change your withholdings on your payroll taxes to give you a little bit more dollars each month. So there's some things that you can do because if you do itemize your tax returns, all the interest that you do pay on your mortgage is going to be a tax deduction for you. So you're not going to be paying as much as payroll taxes. So there are some tidbits of information that we can share with the consumer when they're not quite sure what their budget is. Now, in today's day, most of the time, the highest buying power I can get them to is also their maximum.
I totally agree with you, and because we all know in the back of our head what's coming out of our account, because we're all checking those accounts and like, ooh, why is it lower than I expected? And then you're double checking. It's like, ooh, I haven't used that service. I mean, as a realtor, I pay into a lot of services, so there's times I have to go through and clean out. It's like, oh, I don't use that anymore. Same thing with the consumer. We do pay a lot for things that we don't necessarily need. Most of the questions were redundant. It's just different ways of phrasing it. Do you have any tidbits, Karen, to share about you or about what you think people need to take into consideration as of the market right now?
Well, if you can qualify for a loan, you really need to seriously explore it. Because once interest rates do drop, and I don't see them dropping back down to the 3%, so I probably say we're going to land between 5 and 6%. Now, my crystal ball works as well as Crystal's crystal ball. Okay. But that's what all the economists are telling us is that we're probably going to land between 5 and 6%. That's not much far away where we are right now. So if you can qualify now, definitely take advantage of it because when interest rates drop just by 1%, you're going to see all of those other buyers returning to the market, which is now going to make your choices even less and the competition higher. And you're going to be pretty much pushed out of the market once again. And I'm really speaking to first-time home buyers when I say this. A lot of resale buyers have the ability to put down large chunks of money from the sale of their current home. Our first-time home buyers, you don't have access to those large chunks of money. So take advantage of this marketplace. It's a short window of opportunity. And I'm thinking probably sometime next year is when we're going to start seeing inflation improve. And when we start seeing inflation improve, historically, mortgage interest rates have improved. And when that starts happening, you're going to see buyers return to the market and your window of opportunity is going to disappear on you.
And as a reminder to everybody, Karen does have access to tools to help show you the numbers of buying now versus later. And she'll help you look at your whole scenario to make an informed decision. She is not going to push you one way or another. She will show you the numbers. And of all people, you know your situation best. You know what's happening in your life that we don't know what's going to be happening. No. And like she said, we don't have a crystal ball. My name may be Crystal, but I don't have a ball. And if I could predict the future, I don't think I would be in real estate.
We do, this team here that we have this interview. Yes, Crystal and I go back maybe 8 or 9 years now. Mm-hmm. It's been a while, but we really, really truly believe in home ownership, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing if we didn't believe in it. We are not just after the income. We are not just after the glory of doing large production. We are after helping first-time home buyers investing themselves and doing the number one best thing that you can do for yourself in your adult financial life. You're going to build wealth with real estate. And yes, home values go up and home values go down. And that's why having that monthly payment where you can afford it is so vitally, essentially important, because as the home values do go down, because I'm sure it's going to happen again once we start getting our builders to build a whole lot more homes, we're going to have too much inventory. And when there's too much inventory, what happens to prices? Prices go down, right? So when the prices go down, as long as your payment is set where you can afford it, then you can just ride out that down scoop of real estate values. During the Great Recession, I'm in the same home. I love my little home. It's a perfect little home for us. And our home value went down by 50%. 50%. I had clients calling me saying, Karen, I'm just going to give the keys back to the bank. And I'm like, no, don't do that. That's the worst thing you can do. You're going to put a foreclosure on your record. You're going to put a deed in lieu of on your record. You're going to have a short sale on your record. It's going to destroy your credit. And it's not going to help you in the future at all in so many different areas. I held through. I made my payments on time each and every month. And my home value now is probably 50% higher than it was before. So it really is this. And if you go over time, we'll notice that real estate does the stepping. They go like that.
I'm so happy you brought that up because I've had people, I have some people signed up for HomeBot, and every month they'll get like a little report on their home. And like you said, if you look at month to month or day by day, you're going to see it do this. Mm-hmm. And like Karen said, it's going to do this, but it's
always going to go high.
It's going to be getting higher. So it's going to be, so don't look at it month to month because you are going to go nuts over it. You want to basically, in my opinion, look at it at least once a year, maybe even twice a year at the most. Don't look at it every month because you will go nuts.
Don't even look at it at all until you're ready to sell. And then when you're ready to sell, you contact your real estate agent and saying, okay, I'm ready to sell. And, when's the best time for me to sell? And she will give you guidance of what's happening in the markets. If there is a downturn, she'll tell you, you know what, let's go ahead and wait a couple of months because I anticipate this to happen and that to happen. Crystal is very good at what she does. She knows what's happening in her marketplace. And that's why your team is so vitally important. So thank you so very, very much for your time today.
I appreciate you coming on, Karen, and answering all these questions and also providing that reel earlier because it did give a lot of visuals for us to see because in your head, it's naturally to say, oh, I got to wait for this. But once the numbers play out, you see the opportunity that you're missing. And again, it may not be the right time for you, but if it is, you might really want to sit down and have a conversation with Karen and really look at the numbers. There's no obligation to it. There isn't. I've had people talk to Karen and they'll come back say, I'm just not ready yet. Or they'll tell me, I didn't realize that I was ready to go and this is an opportunity. Again, like earlier when Karen said, if you don't ask, it's automatically going to be no. You have to ask and find out. It could be a yes or not now.
Yeah, and once you do talk with me, you'll be put on my newsletter, and that way whenever you are ready, you just reach out. And the newsletters that we provide are not buy a house, buy a house, buy a house. It's more of this is what's going on. This is what's going on. This is how we can help. So, we do care. So you choose my words of advice is choose your team with thought. Choose the right team to help you through this process. It can be scary, but it's very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I appreciate you doing this. And again, I'm Crystal McKenna with Long Realty Partners, and I have Karen Jones here today with Altitude Home Loans.
Take care. Bye-bye now.